Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
As Oregon grapples with how to balance its budget, lawmakers are considering a new source of revenue. It would come from legalizing marijuana, then taxing it. News Channel 8's Tim Gordon joins us live in downtown Portland to tell us where the idea stands. Tim?
Well, Tracy, the plan is in the form of a House bill that gets a committee hearing next month. It's a long way from law, but some lawmakers think it's time to start planning for legalization. Marijuana gaining acceptance, now a bill that would make it legal in Oregon. After voters in states, including neighboring Washington, gave it a green light, some in Salem doubt a pot prohibition will last here.
I just think that the public opinion is shifting. They want some changes, so we need to look at that and stay up with that.
We celebrate our whiskey, we celebrate our Oregon wines, and these are substances that are far more dangerous than marijuana.
Roy Kaufman of the Marijuana Policy Project thinks the legislature is on the right track. His group is pushing for a voter-approved initiative in 2016 to legalize cannabis.
I think that this bill is the kind of approach that we want to be able to show to lawmakers to say, look, we want to do this comprehensively, we want to do this the right way.
There will no doubt be a healthy debate before any bill legalizing marijuana hits the House floor. The Oregon State Sheriff's Association is against legalization, saying substance abuse has long been recognized as a key contributor to criminal behavior. And Oregon sheriffs believe that the legalization of marijuana will undermine the quality of life in communities across the state. Legalization would allow the state to regulate the growing, selling, and smoking of marijuana and could raise millions of tax dollars an ounce at a time. Some lawmakers may oppose the idea.
So what's the tax going to be? I really am not real favorable on either of those two proposals, legalization or taxing it.
But others think it's time to prepare for what appears inevitable.
Looks like legalization is on the way, and so we want to take a look at how we could best draft a law like that. Now, I don't know that we're going to be able to pass anything this session, but we're going to take a look at it.
Yeah, but maybe in 2014 in the short session then, Representative Barker, you just heard from, is the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. His committee will have a public hearing on this, the first one, April 2nd.
In between the blues, there are good days and bad days, with everything and nothing to lose. While the setting sun never sits, and the night has no limits. The void between freedom and free, dealing with the unnatural reality. A need to see, a need to be. Grass fire, my DNA needs THC.
Grass fire in a world that yearns. That's the way this fire burns. Like a grass fire.
In the unnatural society, been trying to maintain, while the sane appear to be clearly insane, with no way to explain. Outlasting the great lie, a sparking spark does my mind. Grass fire, pulling the sky, breathing in sativa's design.
Grass fire in a world that yearns. That's the way this fire burns. It's a grass fire.
The void between freedom and free, dealing with the unnatural reality. A need to see, a need to be. Grass fire, my DNA needs THC. Dreaming of long times past, all that those times brought. Looking to the heart of tomorrow. Grass fire in a world that yearns. That's the way this fire burns.
At the end of the Korean War, World War II, they really came down on it. Life in prison for a joint. They really suppressed it. They didn't want all these soldiers discovering THC and coming back here, having discovered it. Same thing at the end of the Korean War. At the end of the Vietnam War, not only did they lose their control of war-making apparatus and the way to make more war, their inability to control the Vietnam War was also mirrored by their inability to suppress this plant with the soldiers when they discovered it over in Vietnam. And so they bought it back and turned on my generation to it. I was turned on to marijuana by a very good friend who was an airplane mechanic in Bangkok, Thailand during the Vietnam War. He came back with a duffel bag full of it and says, "Here, try this." And I trusted him. He later became a doctor. I knew he was smart. I knew he knew what he was doing. He turned me on to marijuana, and bless his heart, saved my life.
When I was in college, in the graduate school down in Stanford, going through the writing program, we lived in a little community called Perry Lane. And one of our good friends and neighbors was a guy that was enrolled in the drug experiments that were going on in the VA hospital. He didn't really want to do it. Psychologists, by their nature, are cowards. They wouldn't be psychologists. So he said, "Here, you go and do it for me. You get $20 a day. You have to go in every Tuesday at about 8:30. They give you something, and then they test you with test your urine and your blood sugar. They test your reflexes. They see if you can add and subtract. About every hour, they'd come through and do this stuff. And where they were doing it was on the ward in the old Menlo Park hospital. A VA hospital. And when I looked out through this little window, the little windows that have chicken wire inside of the glass, and looked out there at the ward and saw these people out there, I realized that these people knew something that the doctors didn't know. They were crazy and they were in pain, but they were enlightened in some way. And the villain that they were seeing, and they could sense the thing that was driving them crazy, it didn't have anything to do with Freud. It had to do with America. And they had all followed the correct lines. They'd all been vets. They'd all had good jobs. And something wasn't working. Something was haywire. And they knew it. And either they had to become unpatriotic or just go ahead and be crazy.
In the 1960s, it was a really interesting time period because there were two different cultures that were running parallel to one another. And in many ways, they were really parallel because rarely did they cross. And when they did cross, it usually created some sparks. The one culture was the little home in the suburbs with the polyester suits and the synthetic life of two cats and a dog in the garage and the whole bit. And then there was the counterculture, who was really, I think, pursuing more the natural way of life. They were trying to become more grounded, more environmentally conscious, and more concerned about the things that they were putting into their bodies. And so at that time, drug use took, I think, an interesting twist in that a lot of people were very interested in psychoactive experimentation and turned to a lot of chemicals like speed and acid, for example. But there was also a very strong movement at the time to move into the natural things of life. So at that time, people began to be very interested in marijuana, also very interested in natural clothes, cottons, flaxes and linens and silks and wools, things that were more consistent, I think, with their kind of back to the woods, simple lifestyle.
Hemp, like tobacco and so many things with farmers, is really a victim of the weather. A good season, everything works right, you got a super quality fiber. If it's not good and things turn out not so well, you don't have a good yield and you may have a lower quality fiber. But as it used to be, and we think now would be a use for any of the fiber. It is an oil crop. I think it's you look in the botanical files, it's under the oil families. Hemp oil sells at $1 an ounce. You can go out on Southland Drive and buy it today. I think it's $20 a bottle for about 18 ounces, or less, 16 ounces maybe. Hungarians, we've talked to a man in Canada whose parents were from Hungary. He went back to the villages they came from, and they grind up the seed and make hemp butter, just like we have peanut butter. Very nourishing. They feed the school children. And if you take the oil out of it, it's just like soybean meal. You feed all the animals. So, history, the book's full of it. It's a matter of, can we think we've grown so wise or naive, or just plain illiterate, that all of a sudden the crop is all bad. And the phenomenon is, when you're eating popcorn, corn makes whiskey. You don't really think about that when you're eating popcorn, though. Or if you like real good sweet corn in the springtime, and wait till hope you can get some, you don't sit there thinking about a bottle of whiskey. The damn plant can make anything out of it.
It's the paper that the Constitution is written on. I used to put up hay with hemp string, by far the best string. The plastic stuff is just terrible to fool with because it all shreds and cows get it in their toes and you can't get rid of it. The sisal, which we buy, that comes from India, it doesn't have those nice long staples that hemp has. And I've got a big ball over the house made out of hemp twine. And this area would just be a wonderful place to grow it. And you can grow that big old stuff. You can grow it as high as this barn. You don't have much potency to it at all. And my brother and I have laminated chunks of these stalks together and squeezed them down with a cheese press. So you're able to get what are essentially 4x4s with pithy interiors, and they attach together just by their own resins. It'll take a nail, you could saw it. It could be the answer to all these loggers who have run out of trees. This whole valley up there, and the first state that does it is going to be way out in front of the other states.
I have talked with many older women that are farmers, that are sincerely interested in industrial hemp as a cash crop. They understand the historical basis of where we've grown industrial hemp. They've done an incredible job of researching what other countries are doing in terms of raising industrial hemp. And they're very interested from a very sincere economic point of view. Could this be the next cash crop for the American farmer? Is there some hope here? There's another faction that supports industrial hemp, not so much from an alternative fiber perspective, but from the group or the faction that's really sincerely interested in legalizing, if not continuing to decriminalize, the use and production of marijuana in the United States. So there is also a very strong pro-marijuana lobby that's acting that would also like to see industrial hemp being legalized because it's a foot in the door. They're both cannabis sativa.
Let me put it like this. Some people who don't know me give me a reputation for wanting to legalize drugs. I do not want to do that. I'm in the business of trying to license and regulate cannabis as a crop. Tomatoes are legal. Alcohol and tobacco is licensed and regulated. And I seek to license and regulate, take it out of the black market status, just cannabis now. I would take the law enforcement dollar, which we would save off of the that we're currently spending on detecting, arresting, prosecuting, and incarcerating people who associate with the cannabis plant. If we change the laws, we'd save all that money. I would go after the hard drugs. I'd go after the synthetic drugs, the crack, the cocaine, the heroin, those kinds of synthetic drugs, man-made drugs, which destroy the spirit and overcome rights of determination and self-choice because they're addictive and destructive to the body.
The spirit itself has become corrupted. Everybody knows that the coke is bad stuff and that it has bad spirit. It runs through a gamut of people that are against enlightenment. They're wanting you to try this stuff that makes you feel powerful, and then it goes away in about 10 minutes. And the people, the local people that we know, are growing little dabs of grass and stuff. Their stuff isn't that strong, but you don't want it that strong. It's one thing that we've learned is you don't need a huge bunch of anything. You can get the same effect with just a little bunch. And we're mature enough to be able to make those kind of decisions. We've never heard it debated. We've never heard this gateway drug thing debated. You know, they say with grass leads to heroin. You can say the same thing about milk and gin.
These are all newly acquired, freshly open, nifty little things. This one is a corn. The first two are corn removers. This one is from Jane's, and it's ether and cannabis indica. It says right there, close in on that. And then this says it's a non-proprietary formula of salicylic acid, or aspirin, and cannabis indica, which it says is poison. And that's the formula, and it's medicated, elastic, adhesive, ectoplast, corn rings to ripe out corns and other nasty things. This is a couple of different chlorodyne and neuralgic medicines, but this one has morphine, extract of cannabis indica, nitroglycerin, peppermint, just a little bit of peppermint in there to add a little flavor, I think, you know. It's a nifty little label, multicolor. It's from Independent Pharmaceutical Company of Worcester, Massachusetts. We're looking at about 1890. It's embossed on the back with IP Co., the name of the company, and nifty little poison thing here. Next door we find Shiflin's neuralgic medicine. It is cannabis and opium and other nifty things from Shiflin's in Philadelphia. This also is a neurological medicine, and it's from Park Davis of Detroit, Michigan, and it is opium extract and cannabis and a lot of other little things in there, and that's from Park Davis. And this last one is tonight's piece de resistance. It's powdered extract of Indian cannabis from Park Davis. And it's about half full. You can see, we might call it keef. This is circa 1880 powdered extract of cannabis, powdered hashish. And like I say, it's about half full. It's got a thing on the back. This one's a pretty nifty one. It has nice writing on it. It's owing to the character of this drug, and it's a powder equal the medicinal value, and it's a narcotic like opium. It relieves pain and spasms, but does not diminish the appetite or check the secretions. That's from Park Davis.
And that's what you call really cured, huh?
Yeah, that's been cured. Definitely aged. Aged
Wow.
cannabis. Now, I'm not ever going to open this. This is a valuable antique, but my understanding is that it degrades at about 10% a year, and since it's
So it's
about
gone.
120 years old, it was gone a long time ago.
Its time has passed.
Yeah.
Well, what is cannabis? Cannabis, of course, is a medicine.
I think it's important to say that no medication is going to work for everybody all the time.
It's a specific for migraines, it's a specific for seizures.
The take on the plant is that it's symbiotic with the human.
If you can get something that's natural, that has literally zero side effects.
Yet it works as almost a ubiquitous inhibitor of a lot of systems in the brain.
The science is absolutely clear. The pharmaceuticalization of cannabis is just beyond the horizon.
I think it's easier for men to come out and say they support it because women have a lot more on the line. You know, if they're mothers, then they have their kids on the line.
So I tried it, and at first, it freaked me out. I had a few panic attacks.
We know that cannabis can prevent Alzheimer's, and if it can reduce all these ailments and keep your stress level low, that adds years to your life before you're even sick.
And so the petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial, transnational, corporate fascist elite SOBs vilified the cannabis plant.
We're all grown up now. We're not in the closet anymore. We don't give a what you think. We smoke marijuana.
But once you just let go with it and just be, it does so many things.
Consciousness opens the doors of perception, expands consciousness, and puts you in a receptive state.
I like to say when I give lectures, I start off by saying I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
Part of what we're doing with Oregon NORML is trying to maximize the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act and try to help the patients that truly need the medicine.
America's ready for a change in the marijuana laws. We're reached critical mass to change this critical mass.
Let's hope we can all live together in peace and harmony, love, and legalize marijuana, for God's sake.
300 medical marijuana cigarettes on there, and I smoke 10 to 12 per day.
And without thinking twice, 60-year-old Irvin Rosenfeld sparks up a joint. And he can, because he's one of only 4 people in the entire country who receives medical marijuana directly from the federal government.
I mean, that's my prescription. And then here's the government label.
Rosenfeld fought for 10 years to get this federal prescription for a rare bone disease causing chronic pain. The collective fight, though, has a new face. Fort Lauderdale attorney and activist Norm Kent is now the head of NORML, or the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. His fight began back in 1971 at Hofstra University.
Nassau County Police raided our dormitories and arrested 35 students for smoking pot. I was outraged, infuriated.
And Kent has kept that intensity for 40 years. His first major legal victory? In 1982, he sued the state of Florida for spraying the deadly herbicide paraquat on marijuana fields. With a doctor's permission to ease effects of lymphoma, Kent is a self-proclaimed pot smoker, but he says it's more than just lighting up. This is about civil rights.
It's not just a drug war. It's a war against individual sovereignty, personal freedom, the ability of a human being to exercise dominion over his being.
The states of Colorado and Washington legalized the use of marijuana, and since then, Kent says the national fight for legal marijuana, medicinal or decriminalizing it, has intensified. There are hundreds of NORML chapters now and more than 500 lawyers fighting the fight.
America will recognize that responsible adults have the right to consume cannabis, and the laws will protect them instead of prosecute them.
And Norm's been fighting the fight for a long time as an attorney and also as a goodwill ambassador for medical cannabis. This has saved my life. Okay, without it, if I were still alive, I'd be homebound. I'd be a drain on society.
Keith Jones, NBC6, South Florida.
This is Mr. Henry Ford in 1941 with Popular Mechanics magazine showing off his car made from hemp.
Well, come climb the mountain with me. Come see what we can see. Come climb the mountain with me, and then we will all be free. Some men are born to lead, some men have destiny. Some men plant the seed, and some men set it free.
Here we had 92,000 cars a day, thousands of people parking behind the FBI building, and they arrested us and they said, you cannot do this. I said, well, I'm not going to pay you a fine and go on probation. So I did 15 days in prison rather than give them a $5 fine.
Wow, you know, that's kind of like telling Jesus you can't practice on Sunday.
It was a fine line.
So come climb the mountain with me, come see what we can see. Come climb the mountain with me, and then we will all be free.
Jack here and Ed Adair.
Well, hi, guys.
They must be on the hemp tour. Are you on the hemp tour?
One man said we must hear. One man's voice was clear. One man heard the call. His vision speaks for all.
The number one plant for paper, fiber, and fuel from the natural cycle had been outlawed. That somehow the synthetic cycle had won, when the number one thing in the natural cycle could outproduce it and completely clean up the atmosphere. So my partner, Captain Ed, who had become my partner in 1973 and doing the politics of this, said, we have to teach everybody in the world. So we went around and told everybody. But it was a slow process.
So come open your eyes with me, and come see what you can see. It's time for the world to know the emperor wears no clothes. Come open your eyes with me. It's time for you to see. It's time for the world to know the emperor wears no clothes. It's time for the world to know the emperor wears no clothes. The emperor wears no clothes. The emperor wears no clothes. The emperor wears no clothes.
I have so many enormous clinic days. I mean, every day you look in my book here, these are all patients that I have seen on those days. 41, 48, 47. The principal problem that we confront in this clinic is chronic pain. It's basically a pain clinic. Well, take a seat there, young lady. Now, Tony, you're dealing with irritable bowel syndrome, which is a weird disease. How does a cardiac surgeon end up getting involved with cannabis? And that is not an easy question to answer. I'm losing my vision. And when you're a heart surgeon, the worst thing that can happen to you is to lose your vision. So that's really one of the things that encouraged me to go into this thing.
I vaporize a little bit in the morning before I go to work. Sometimes if I've had a hard day and I've sat in a chair too long, I will use it in the smoking area at work. And then of course at night. Yes. But I don't smoke all day long.
Now, there are doctors who know one hell of a lot more about cannabis than I do. You know, there are a lot of people working in this clinic that know more about which strains are acceptable for what things. They know more about that than I do. But I know that when somebody is a candidate for the use of cannabis, I know that when they are and when they are not.
Well, for the IBS, they gave me 4 different kinds of antidepressants, and they made me feel like I wasn't me. So when I got off of those and I started marijuana, I felt like me and I could move around, and you know, it still hurts. I mean, it doesn't completely dissolve the pain, but I could be an active person in society. I love Dr. Orvald. He asks you a bunch of questions, marks some stuff on the paperwork, and then signs it.
It causes mainly abdominal discomforts. And by using cannabis, and either orally or by inhaling the vapor, you can help to control that discomfort. One of the problems that we have today in medicine is excessive use of narcotics and opiates, which has escalated over the past few years, and those few years and that it has become such a severe problem are the years that I have recently spent here, because I see it every single day. I don't criticize the patients, I criticize the doctors, because the doctors are the guys who are handing out narcotics and opiates like they're candy. This is not the way medicine should be practiced. I am here to take care of patients. That's what I've done my whole life. And I will do that for as long as I can. But you see how many I do see here: 48, 38, 37, 47, 45. Mamma mia, that's enough.
The loud cry and march of activists in Portland hoping to galvanize support to legalize marijuana. Prohibition doesn't work. That's the message from the Oregon chapter of a national group that wants to reform marijuana laws. And those activists made sure their message was heard loud and clear yesterday. Portland and several hundred other cities held a global cannabis march. The event is in its 13th year. Participants gathered in Pioneer Courthouse Square before marching through downtown with a police escort. The organization's executive director says there's been a shift in public sentiment toward more liberal marijuana policies, and they hope the march galvanized support.
About 50% of Americans now support legalization of cannabis for adults, and we think that it could be a great boon to the economy here in Portland and statewide. And between cannabis and legalizing growing of industrial hemp, that we could probably solve a lot of the economic problems that we're having here in Oregon.
After the rally, medical marijuana patients were invited to a cannabis cafe in Southeast Portland to hear several speakers.
Registered participants included the manufacturers of paints and varnishes who used hemp seed oil in their products, suppliers of birdseed, and the manufacturers of medicinal products such as corn plasters and various remedies used by veterinarians. Unregistered participants, it was assumed, would be marijuana dealers. Though it was alleged by the prohibitionists to cause unwitting citizens to commit violent crimes, the politicians who had seen the complete failure and subsequent repeal of the prohibition on alcohol a few years before stopped short of outlawing cannabis outright. But even as a tax, the legislation provided the government a large measure of control with very real penalties for those who failed to comply.
Now, pardon me, I don't think marijuana was a problem back in 1937. It certainly wasn't a problem. It's certainly not a problem today, and it's all over the place. So I don't know how it could possibly have been a problem in 1937. Except for the fact that when they passed that law, for the first time the federal government took over the right to tell you what seed you could plant in the ground and what you could do with the product of that seed.
Simultaneously, what was happening from a commercial perspective is that industrial hemp was really losing its stand here in U.S. agriculture. There were a lot of other alternative fibers that were coming in. We had a lot of manila hemp coming in, which is not cannabis sativa. We also had sisal coming in from the Orient, cotton coming in from the Middle East, abaca coming in from Southeast Asia, as well as a lot of synthetic materials, particularly during World War II, that were coming in to supplant the price effectiveness or competitiveness of industrial hemp in the commercial agricultural market.
The hemp industry did undergo increased scrutiny as a result of the tax, but the law provided an exemption for the stalk portion of the plant, requiring the few farmers still growing hemp to register with the Treasury Department. But a token payment of a $1 a year occupational tax was all that was required to keep producing hemp. The campaign against marijuana, which originated with state and federal law enforcement officials, was bureaucratic in nature and hysterical in tone. It succeeded largely because it circumvented any attempts for a true public or scientific debate on the issue. The prohibitionists deftly fused marijuana usage with the deep-seated racial fears and the isolationist tendencies of America in the 1930s, and the result was the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. 1 year after the Marijuana Tax Act was passed, an article in Popular Mechanics magazine predicted the unprecedented reflowering of hemp culture. It observed that new uses and the recent development of improved processing machinery were about to bring the nearly extinct crop back into the limelight, replacing the numerous foreign fibers and creating a new billion-dollar cash crop for the country's farmers. But what no one predicted was that in less than 4 years, more than 14,000 U.S. farmers would be under contract to the federal government to grow hemp on 178,000 acres of prime farmland. Like the First World War, the outbreak of World War II halted the importation of hemp from Russia and Italy, and once again hostilities somewhere in the world caused a resurgence of America's hemp industry. This time, however, conditions worsened with Japan's entry into the war, cutting off America's principal source of fiber, abaca from the Philippines, commonly called Manila hemp. The situation threatened to limit not only America's buildup of military forces, but also impede the growth of wartime agricultural production.
It was desperately sought to help save the lives, first to make parachutes, and equally to have rope sufficient. And then they found out those little U-boats, 2-man German subs could shoot a hole in the ship, but it wasn't too damnish big. So if they take a hemp rug and drop it over the side, they could pump enough to save the troops' lives.
By the spring of 1942, a major government-sponsored campaign was in full swing, hoping to persuade farmers to grow the fibers so vital to the war effort. A corporation, War Hemp Industries, was put in place to purchase the crops and manage the operation of some 70 processing sites proposed for speedy construction in Kentucky and throughout the Midwest. The hemp-marijuana connection was, for the most part, forgotten during this period, though participating farmers were required to register with the U.S. Treasury. By the end of 1943, the world's shipping situation had eased to the point where large amounts of sisal were being imported from British East Africa, and U.S. stockpiles of fiber began to return to acceptable levels. With the emergency over, the government began dismantling the hemp program, and production quickly decreased as foreign fibers began to dominate the market once again. Since the participating farmers had not invested heavily in the venture, there was little resistance to ending the program, and most simply returned to growing more profitable crops like corn and tobacco. In the span of a few years, the U.S. government had gone from condemnation to adulation in their public relations campaigns for and against the cannabis plant. As the war came to an end, the crop, which had been cast as both criminal and war hero, looked as if it were headed toward extinction once again.
From the heart.
There are times I turned out crooked, and times I turned on doubt. There are times I just kept trying, and times I just went without.
From the heart.
There are times I felt like screaming, and times I probably did. There are times I can't quite remember, and times I can never forget. There are times love is a shadow, and times love is a chain. There are times love is the light, and times love is to blame.
From the heart.
There are times when a smile is a smile, and times when it is not. There are times time buys, and times time bought. There are times I went way out there, and times I never came back. There are times of great feeling, and times I don't feel a thing. There are times love is a shadow, and times love is a chain. There are times love is the light, and times love is to blame. There are times I keep waiting for, and times that are never going to come. There are times I could have done different, and times different isn't there. There are times the balance is balance, and times the rush is too extreme. There are times it's all I can do to live, and times I'm glad that I do.
Hello and welcome to the Seattle Million Marijuana March, which is put on by the folks with the Seattle Hemp Fest. We're here to document the march, which leaves from Seattle's Volunteer Park and heads over to Westlake Park over in downtown Seattle. Looks like a crowd of about 300 people here at the start of the march. Maybe a little more. It's growing, so that's a good thing. And so we're about 4 minutes away from the start of the march.
Let's do it. Save your voices for when we get to a populated area. Let's go. Keep it slow.
Exercise our rights and put on a hemp fest, and we'll educate the youth who soon will rule the land. Cause it's just a matter of time, and it's time to take a stand. Cause it's a losing battle, one the party can't win. Been going on for years, just keeps right on going. Like the Cold War with the commies, prohibition and the right. You can throw us all in prison, but you cannot win the fight. Cause it's a losing battle.
get ready to receive it. Now let's take back America. When the war is over and we've won it, let's remember how we've done it so we don't have to do it again. So we don't have to do it again. There was a peace resolution and a peaceful revolution, and the peaceful solution saved America. And the peaceful solution saved America. A peaceful solution, a peace revolution. Let's take back America. It's a dream, so believe it. Now get ready to receive it. Now let's take back America. Let's take back America. There was a peace resolution and a peaceful revolution, and a peaceful solution saved America. And the peaceful solution saved America.
We are here today as part of a global voice that is screaming, we will not be persecuted, we will not be scapegoated, we will not be demonized or imprisoned any longer. This is a civil rights movement, and it's sweeping the world. As adults in a free society, we demand the right to make our own educated and informed choices on what we use for medicine, in industry, for spiritual purposes, and for recreation as adults. To our government, we are saying, we do not need you in our living rooms. Thank you. We do not need you in our bedrooms. We do not need you in our grow rooms. And we don't need you in our goddamn bloodstreams, that's for sure. We're saying, no more orphans, no more clear cuts, no more ocean of tears, no more pot war. We demand cannabis amnesty now for all prisoners. We're living in some wild times, man. Nobody has ever lived in a time like this in the history of humanity. Things are changing fast. These are times of major transition for human behavior. This change is manifesting in so many ways that it would be difficult to compute them all. One can only guess what the result of this gradual metamorphosis will be, but there's one thing that is certain to any discerning person, and that is, as a people, to have any kind of positive impact or effect on creating a desirable future for the generations that surely will come, short of global calamity, we got to come together right now. The people who will have the most successful impact on the world will be those who follow principles and ideals based in values that are morally and ethically right, that are